start by saying that the role that OMB and CBO play are fundamentally different from each other in the sense that it is OMB's specific job to help whoever the president happens to be to get that president's policies put forward. And so while a lot of the staff at OMB, many of the staff at OMB move, from one presidential administration to another, it's their primary job to help whoever happens to be president at that particular point in time. And so in that sense, it's a much more sort of policy-focused role than the CBO role, which is supposed to be, specifically nonpartisan. But having said that, I think the think tanks, the challenge is that there's so much information from so many different sources that the credibility of, I think they've added a lot to the debate, but they are not always uniformly credible. That is, you have to start by knowing perhaps what their agenda is, and then if I were looking at something that was coming out of a think tank, I might think, well, is this something that they're trying to sort of put out there because it's true, or are they trying to put it out there because they've already decided what the answer is and they're trying to sort of get data to back up that assertion? But in the end, I think they do worry about their credibility. So, for example, the press, after not too long, would figure out if a particular think tank was just out there trying to sort of spin it in exactly their way, and certainly if they were making up information, and they would stop paying as much attention to them. But you can see signals, and some of the think tanks hate this, but you can see sort of signals even when you read reports about what these think tanks have, information these think tanks have come up with, let's say in the newspaper, because it'll describe one as being sort of liberal leaning and another one as being sort of right leaning. So you almost never see the Center on Budget Policy Priorities, for example, quoted when there's not the adjective in front of it that says liberal. And you'll almost never see the Heritage Foundation quoted when you don't see the adjective conservative in front of it. Now that doesn't mean the people in those institutions necessarily agree with, with that particular characterization, but I think that that's a signal that the media is trying to sort of put out there, that you should take a little bit what you're seeing here with a grain of salt, because these people have perhaps a particular agenda that they're trying to advance. But there's a lot more. I mean, I will say there's a lot more budget information out there than there was 20 or 25 years ago, and I think a lot of that is because there are a lot more think tanks out there that are producing. Other questions? Yes?
There's a lot of thoughts out there, characterizing McCain as perhaps bringing back Reaganomics, or do you believe that that is the case, and if so, what things do you think kind of resemble Reagan, and what areas do you think he kind of departs from him?
I think the place at this moment that he most resembles Reagan is the notion that tax cuts are always good. And I will say, it's going to be posted on the AABPA website, so now I'm not going to be able to get out of this, but I will say that, what I've seen so far in the McCain campaign, it's more the distance that John McCain is from John McCain, and less the distance that John McCain is from Reagan, because the positions that John McCain is taking now are not necessarily the positions that he took when he was a senator. And one of the biggest examples of this is the tax cuts. When the Bush tax cuts were proposed, he wasn't necessarily in favor of them, and now he's in favor of extending them for a long period of time. And I will commend to you, if you're a real political junkie, a book that was written about the 1996 presidential election called The Choice by Bob Woodward. And the main sort of subtext of that book is how Bob Dole, in an attempt to be elected president, went back on an awful lot of things that Bob Dole had always stood for. That Bob Dole, the senator, and Bob Dole, the presidential candidate, it was hard to recognize the similarities between the two of them. I don't think that I've seen, except sort of in general rhetoric. I mean, President